There you go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Agritech Founders Diary. Here we have conversations with amazing entrepreneurs who are doing great stuff in the agritech industry. And today is not different at all. We've gotten an amazing guest joining us this evening, and I'm so super excited to be having him joining us this evening. I think he's one of our first guests joining us from the UK, and we are really excited to have him join us. But however, before I introduce our guest speaker tonight, I want to appeal to you guys that please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, please. Really, it got to a lot of over 60% of you watch our YouTube channel and you don't subscribe. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can go and we can do bigger things. And don't forget to hit the notification buttons to get notified whenever we are live or whenever we drop any new videos. Drop your comments, engage with us on the comment section, and like this video so we can get a good rate. Thank you very much, guys, for always joining us live. And thank you very much to our guest for joining us this evening. So our guest this evening is no other person. It's Mr. Ben Scott Robinson. He's the co-founder of the Small Robotic Company. Small Robotic Company is a company I've always read about. I've read so much about the amazing stuff they've been doing in their agritech ecosystem. And today I'm really excited to have him join us this evening. I've read about him from on so many papers. In one of my courses in school, I also it was a case study. His company, Small Robotic Company, was a case study. And having read so much about your company, having you join me this evening, I'm really super excited. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ben, for joining me this evening. I'm really excited to have you.
Oh, Kenneth, thank you so much for asking me. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's a real treat to be on Agritech Founders Diary, and I hope it's interesting. So glad to be here.
We hope so. We're having a nice time together this evening. But first of all, Mr. Ben, I want to take us back to where it all started from. Take us to your entire background. Share your entire story with us, where it all started from, where you were born, how you grew up from. Take us back to where it all started from with you. Give us the entire story. We want to know you first.
So I mean, I won't go through the entire life story because
Yeah.
I don't know if you realize, but maybe I'm a little bit older than you, so it will probably be a pretty long story. From my career perspective, I suppose, when I was young, I went to university, but I didn't finish university. I ended up leaving university early, and so leaving university early, and so I didn't have a job or know what I was doing. And so I became unemployed for a little while. But then there was a government course, which was how to build a website. And this was way back in 1996 when the internet was really just getting started and websites didn't really exist. In fact, there were less than 1 million websites in the whole world. So I did this course, a 6-week course, and it was the most exciting thing. For me, it was a real life-changing thing because it was a combination of being technical and being creative at the same time, and it really triggered what I wanted to do. So then I did that, and then very quickly found work. At the time, there were lots of agencies doing some interesting stuff. And then off the back of that, I was able to go for a company called Deep End, which was just this incredible design agency in London with some really brilliant people, and do some very good work. But at the age of 24, they gave me the chance to then go out and be able to set up an office of their agency in Rome. So I left London and went over to Rome and spent nearly 2 years in Rome setting up that office, which was an incredible amount of fun. Going to a different city, different country, learning the ways and all the rest of it was really cool. And then after that, I came back and started working in sort of internet stuff generally, and got invited over to work for a company that was based in Boston called Digitas. And Digitas paid for me to go on a course at MIT in Cambridge. And that course was around human-computer interaction, and it allowed me to see for the first time this idea of user experience and user-centered design. And for me, that was, just the perfect fit, because I wasn't a designer, I wasn't really technical, but I was really fascinated about why people do things, why people use things. So that was a superb opportunity to learn about that. And then I came back to London and set up the first sort of department within an agency doing what became known as user experience or user-centered design. And then that allowed us, hey, Kenneth, you're back.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening. Yeah, I've been listening to all you're saying. Yeah, I've been listening to you. Yeah, I'm here.
I wasn't sure if I was
good.
into space.
Yeah.
But so the user design was really cool, and then that sort of steered me towards a new company that had just started called Hutchison Telecom, and Hutchison Telecom and mobile phones at the time were, they just had a small screen, they didn't have any internet on them, they were, the screen was just sort of black and white. It wasn't, anything special. There's nothing cool going on with it. The Hutchison Telecom were introducing 3G, and the whole thing about 3G was that, as far as they were concerned, you could do video calling. But the real thing about it was that you could properly do the internet on your phone, right? And so I really wanted to work there. So I sent them loads and loads of emails. I tried to get in there lots of different ways, and saying, look, I've been working in internet stuff for a long time. You need, I want to come work for you, and you need me. And then eventually I got a job there, working as part of the team that was designing the products, the digital products, which were going to go out on their phone. And at the time they thought that it was just going to be video calling was the main thing, and then all the other stuff about the mobile internet and was just like a secondary thing. So we designed the first mobile mapping product. We designed the first sort of mobile travel product. We designed an app store that allowed people to download some new applications to their phone. This was in 2001, 2002, right? So a long, long time before Apple and Android and all that sort of stuff. And all this sort of stuff was completely groundbreaking. And then they launched the product. They launched, it was called 3 in the UK. They launched it with like video calling was going to be the thing. It was going to be absolutely amazing. And nobody used video calling. But what they did do was everybody used mobile internet. And everybody used these services. And in particular, there was this new thing that had just come along called Facebook. And everybody used their mobile phones for checking Facebook. And in fact, the tie between 3G and the adoption of Facebook as a product are directly related. So every country you see, where they had 3G phones and Facebook launched, then Facebook really kicked off. And it was really this sort of what started social media, because, social media is really about personal stuff, right? What's on your phone. And so that was super cool. And so off the back of that, I thought, well, people want to communicate using this new technology. So why don't what kids do, is always way ahead of what adults do in terms of communication. And they were the first people to pick up things like SMS when it came out in sort of 96, 97. And I thought, well, kids need a way to be able to use this new, the new color screens, the sort of like data, all the rest of it, to do something cool. So I thought, well, maybe they'll want to design their own characters, so a character that looks like them, and be able to put clothes on them that they feel comfortable with, and use those to be able to express their moods and their feelings, and be able to get those and send those as well as a message, so they can sort of build up a sort of multi-layered engagement around communication. And so this started this idea in 2003, and thought, if I don't do this by 2005, there'll be like 1,000 of these products, and everyone will, it'll all take over. Anyway, it took until 2009 before we got funding for it. Oh, no, sorry, 2007 before we got funding for it. And nobody else was doing it. All the time this was going on, and nobody else was doing it. Nobody else was doing it. And I thought, somebody's got to do this thing, right? Because it's like everyone wants to do it. And when kids, they all loved it. We got a deal with Cartoon Network, so we're doing loads of stuff with Cartoon Network characters. We did it with fashion brands. We did it with music labels. We did all sorts of things. And it was just, and one of the people who sponsored us was the sort of Chinese consortium that was associated with China Unicom, a big sort of Chinese mobile phone network. And before we launched, they said, we'll take that. We'll buy you out, and we'll take that, and we'll launch it in China. And so it was, and I don't know what happened to it. It was called Tatache. It launched over there. I don't know. But basically, they had so much interest from sort of Chinese kids around, this new method of communication and using avatars and using facial expressions and all the rest of it, that they sort of picked it up and took it away. So then I set up this agency with 6 friends called We Love Mobile, and the focus for that was really around 2 things. One was, it was clear people were going to buy things on mobile phones, but nobody knew how or why or how it was going to work. And also this idea of augmented reality was starting to kick off, looking through your phone and seeing something and, being able to see like something added on top over through mobile phone. So we did these sort of 2 things, like a lot of strategy, a lot of creativity, and we did some first. So we did, like for Coca-Cola, we did the world's first multiplayer augmented reality game, which used, when you go into a McDonald's and you have the tray mat, when you take a tray, there's like a piece of paper on the tray that they put stuff on. So they converted these little sort of tray sheets into an AR target. So when you aimed your phone at it, it's sort of, when you look through your phone, out of this tray popped this sort of mountain, and around the mountain was like a track, and then you could race these little racing cars around the outside, and you could compete. And this went down really well. It was launched in Scandinavia, went down brilliantly, because kids you could sit 4 kids around a table, and they'd all be playing, looking at this sort of a tray in the middle of them in McDonald's, and they would like be racing their own car around. But if one of them nudged the other one and sort of knocked them out of the way, then the car would stop. So it became this really sort of mixture between virtual and augmented and physical, and it was just worked really, really well. And we did it for loads of people. So we did it for McDonald's, we did it for Coke, we did something for the Olympics, we did something for the car manufacturer Lotus, and all these sort of different things. It was really, really fun. But then, so we ended up selling that company to a group called BD Networks, which was really exciting, because mobile at that point it started off being on its own, and then it sort of merged into being part of the online experience. And we sort of, as that happened, we sort of separated away from it. And then I went to work for Complete Change, because I love, all the way through this, what's been driving is that the power of data, of information, is exponentially increased when you know where that is, right? So if I have a piece of information about you as a person, I know your favorite color, whatever it is. If I know where you are at the same time, that information is so much more important, right? So if I know your favorite band, right, and I know where you are, then to be able to tell you where that band is playing in a local bar, or where that band is, there's a phrase, everything happens somewhere. And ultimately, so this power of location, information, was super powerful. So I ended up working for Britain's National Mapping Agency, who do incredible things with location and mapping and data. And it was super, it was a completely different thing, because it was just a company full of nerds, right? It was, but the best nerds, right? Do you know what I mean? Nerds, geeks, right? So they just love maps. They love location. They love everything about it, and they just want it to be absolutely perfect. And but they didn't necessarily have a big vision of how to use it. They were creating these maps and doing this stuff, but they didn't really know what, how you can move that forward. And what I've always done is come in and go, oh, you could, have a vision, right? Here's a vision of how you can do this stuff. And so going into Ordnance Survey, was a chance to be able to say, well, you can do this incredible thing, but imagine if you do it like this, or imagine if you do it like this, or imagine if you do it like this. And so going in there and being able to make all these new cool products with these, nerds who are going, yeah, wow, and we could do it like this, and we could do it, and it was a fun time.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things was that a company called Case New Holland, a tractor company, came to Ordnance Survey because Ordnance Survey were the experts, the absolute experts of precision location. So if you want to know where you are to within 10 meters, then you just use normal GPS. If you want to know where you are or where something is to within like a centimeter or 10 centimeters, then you need to have specialist expertise. And so they were the experts. So this tractor company came along and basically said, look, we've built this tractor and it's quite a scary looking thing. You can find a picture for it online. It's a big red thing, but it's got no cab. There's nowhere for a driver to sit. It is designed to be completely autonomous. Yeah. And they said, we've built this thing. We want to make it work. We want to make this thing just work and drive up and down a field and do what a tractor does with a driver without a driver. And so they came to Ordnance Survey and sort of worked with them on that. But I was sitting there looking at it going, so this is autonomy, right? This is robots. This is basically. But what's the problem they're solving, right? With an autonomous tractor, what's the problem they're solving? They've taken a really, really, really expensive piece of technology, hundreds of thousands of dollars, yeah? And they've put hundreds of thousands of dollars more technology on it to remove the cheapest part, which is the person driving it, right? Because people driving tractors, farmers, they don't charge for their time. If they pay somebody else, they don't pay a lot of money. It's the cheapest part of a tractor is the driver. And all they're doing is taking the driver away. They're not improving farming. They're not improving the system. They're not doing anything. They're just getting rid of the driver. And it's like, that's the wrong thing. So this was like bubbling away in the back of my head for a few months. And then I was driving to work and there was this radio program was talking about farming. And they had a guy on from another big tractor company who was talking about the future of farming and the future of cereal farming particularly. And he was basically describing farming as this industrial process, right? Like, industrial process like Henry Ford, at the start of the 20th century, sort of, just mass producing food, in this completely uniform way. Everything's the same. The field is completely uniform. Everything is completely, and so if we just make the machinery bigger and we make it a little bit faster and maybe we take out the driver and we do this sort of stuff and we just make this industrial process incrementally better over time, then we will incrementally improve the amount of food we're producing and people will be happy. But
Great.
the next, sorry, go
ahead, go on.
But the next guy who came on the radio was actually a professor at a university in the northwest of England called Professor Simon Blackmore, who's, I will eternally credit for why I'm doing this stuff now. And he basically sort of was on the radio. He basically said everything that the previous guy said is wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is because, yes, we can produce food in a industrial way, right?
Yeah.
But there is only so far you can get doing that, right? And right now, we're not producing substantially more food, than we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The yields are, they go up and down, but they're basically kind of the same. And people aren't paying more for the food, and what is happening is that these systems, the deep plowing, the use of chemicals, the heavy use of chemicals, the mass application is having a huge impact on the environment on the field. And that is not sustainable. It is not sustainable because of the amount of soil that's being lost. It's not sustainable because of the chemical pollution that's going into water. It's not sustainable because of the collapse of the biosphere in the soil, and therefore the collapse of the biosphere around it with the birds and all the rest of it. And so, you're in a situation where you are destroying the environment that you are trying to use to grow your crops. You're destroying the thing that's really important to you. What you need to do, he said, was instead of thinking of a field as like this sort of factory where everything's the same and you're doing it all in the same way, you need to think about being much more precise and accurate with the way that you apply and the way that you use your machinery. And the only way you can really do that is by using robots, because you need to have something that can do one task over and over again, can never get tired, can always do it with the same level of accuracy, the same level of capability. And so then you can start thinking about each plant instead of being just part of a factory, but as an individual thing. That plant is the thing. And that combination of location being the most important thing, right? The combination of the use of robots and AI to be able to take something which is so fundamental but so overlooked as farming and make it into an exciting, revolution, right? And at the same time, feed the world, and at the same time, save the planet. These things in my head just went, and I nearly crashed the car. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is it. This is all I want to do. And I was, whatever it was, 41, right? So this is the point when I should have been thinking, I've got my career, I've got my job, I've got my kids, my life, I should just get my pension, retire in a few years, it will be good. And that was the point I was like, no, I can't do the same job anymore. I can't do this job knowing that this thing needs to happen. And if I don't do this thing, who will? And so I phoned the guy, I emailed the guy, phoned him that lunchtime. We spoke for a few times, and it was clear that, he was doing some very cool stuff, but it was university level. And, I said, I came in saying, look, I've done startups, I've done all this sort of stuff. Who do I work for? Who do I have to go and get a job from to make this thing happen? And he's like, there isn't anybody. At the time, there were one or two people. Nio was starting to do some really cool stuff, but really there wasn't really anybody around. And I said, okay, I'm going to have to do this myself. And then I put it over there. It's a massive piece of paper I put up on the wall saying, right, what do I need to learn to be able to build robots to do farming? And it was like, learn farming, learn robots, learn AI. And this is like, it's just not possible. It's just not realistic, right? I can't do all of that stuff. I've got an idea. But the best thing that he did was he said, look, there's this guy down the road, right, who's a farmer, but he's actually been working for a big Accenture, like a big consultancy company, and he's come back to inherit his family farm, and he's gone into his farm and he's looked around and he said, the numbers don't add up, right? I'm looking at how much money my dad's farm makes, and I'm looking at what the costs are, and the amount of money it makes is pretty stationary, but the costs are going up and up and up, and at some point they're going to cross, right? And as soon as they cross, as a business, the farm will stop working. Is my father a bad farmer? I've always thought he was a good farmer. Is he a bad farmer? But then he went to speak to a few other farms around. They all said the same thing, right? And they said, and he had a great line. He said, they spoke in the language of hope. So when he said, look, there's this thing where, you're making this much money, but your costs are going like this, what are you going to do? And they all said, well, we hope that the price of wheat will go up, or we hope that the cost of chemicals go down, or we hope that something's going to come along. There was no answer. There's nothing they could do. They were sort of passively stuck in this situation, right? And so he went to see Professor Simon Blackmore from a farmer's perspective and say, what do I do? Right? Ultimately, I see the farm and it's nothing. My dad's been a great farmer and all the other farms around in the same situation. What do I do? How do I make my farm sustainable? And so he introduced me to me and to him, and his name's Sam Watson Jones, and he's still my business partner now. And he is the absolute sort of match and equal and opposite, I suppose, to me in terms of how we're thinking. And to have somebody, when you're doing a startup, when you're getting something going, to have somebody who you can throw ideas at, who you can disagree with, who you can bash stuff around with, who you can sort of phone up at any time and go, what do you think about this? And if they say to you, or if they say to you, what do you think about this? You can say, I don't think so. Or, just you're completely open with is the most important and valuable thing, and I think that if nothing else happens, if we never get any further, and, to be able to work with somebody for 6-7 years who, you just have that tie with, you have that sort of relationship with is really valuable and important. But so we're together, and then the first thing, and to my shame, because I was working in user experience and, for so many years, to my shame, we talked about the technology, we talked about what we sort of thought farmers might want, but he said, we need to go and speak to farmers. We need to go and find out what more farmers think and find out, if there's something there. And so, and, that should have been my line, but it was his, and it was, I feel really bad for that. But we then sort of worked out what we're going to say, but because he's a farmer and he speaks farmer, he then spent 6 months going and talking to farmers and creating this sort of database of information, this view of how cereal farmers think and feel, and the pains they have and the problems they have and the things that they want to solve and what they feel comfortable with, what they don't feel comfortable with, from these 50 farmers. And it's been, and that has been the basis of what we've done. And we basically came up with everything off the back of what those farmers said, and driven by these farmers and what they thought. And half of those farmers said to us, well, when we took the idea back to them, they said to us, right, we really like it. Can we have it, please? So much so that they prepaid us. They gave us money, as we thought up the concept. They gave us money so that when we were ready to deliver it, we could deliver it for them. And those farmers have since invested in us. They have become our mentors and our guides and our guardians in terms of what we're doing. And everything we're doing is driven by them. So, and that's it. And that's how the company started.
Great. You have a very incredible story that the world really needs to hear. You really shared so much how it happens, and you, along your entire journey, you've gathered a lot of experience, a lot of experience, wealth of knowledge. Thank you for sharing the story with us. But so far, let me ask you, what's been your most proudest moment so far on this journey?
Wow, there are many.
Okay.
So I think the proudest moment. So the first one was we started with this little robot we called Rachel.
Okay.
And we used the Raspberry Pi camera and the Raspberry Pi on it to gather data. And, we basically were trying to combine the robot autonomously going in a straight line and then turning around and coming back in a straight line and gather images at the same time. And Sam and I thought foolishly that would be really easy. To go across a rough field with a little robot in a straight line is really, really difficult. And we only had two other people working with us. My nephew, who was working with us and has worked with us for years and years, and a chap called Joe, and who was our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer. And so the first time we tried it, we went up to Sam's farm and we had the robot and we built this. In fact, Nemo designed this sort of bodywork that we'd 3D printed to put on top of it and all this sort of stuff. And we put it down and said, right, okay, let's make it go. And press the button and it just went boom, into the distance. And the bodywork went flying off and it sort of going like this and ended up in a ditch about, a kilometer. And it's like, oh, it's not easy. And then, but when we got it to do what we wanted it to do for the first time, which took maybe 6 months, it was very exciting. And so that was the first point, I think. And then there were lots of points in between, but the last point I think was, we've done some demos recently for farmers with our latest V4 Tom, which is, it's quite big. It can cover 6 meters with its boom. It can gather data at incredible detail. It's got super reliable, everything's super reliable. It's designed for manufacture. It's literally the opposite of Rachel. And a whole load of farmers came down to watch it. And so the robot handler, Rowan, who is, he's brilliant in his own right, but he gets the robot off the back of a trailer. He literally just steers it off the back of a trailer. He opens out the boom, presses a button, and the robot goes to the start of the line and then just goes, right? And just goes in a perfectly straight line. Yeah, just all the way down. And then at the end, it just goes whoop, round and then perfectly straight line all the way back. And, it's taken years to be able to just press a button and make the robot go. It's taken years for that robot to just go in that straight line, to collect all the imagery all the way down, to stitch it all together, to run it through the AI algorithms and to come out with a map at the end of it. All that stuff tied together, And when the farmers were watching it, they watched Ryan get it out, saw it at the start, and they watched it go down, and they watched it go down into the distance, it's a long field. And they saw it turn around and come back at the end. And then about halfway back down, they got bored. And they turned around and started talking to themselves because it was just doing its job, right?
Yeah.
It's exciting and new and it's a robot, but ultimately, how often can you watch a robot go up and down a field without, and that for me was really exciting because it just shows that these robots are not fantasy. It's not science fiction. It's not something that might happen in 5 years' time. It's like that is a thing that just goes up the field and gives them benefit. And they realize it and they see it and they go, okay. and that's it. You know, so that was probably the most exciting thing recently.
Great. You know, but let me ask, building a robot, there must have been a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles trying to build a company that builds robots. I mean, I can imagine. But can you share some of your obstacles, some of the challenges you went through trying to build this company and now build robots, the high farmers? Yeah.
So the obstacles.
Yes.
So there are two types of obstacles, I suppose. There's sort of the technical obstacles, which there are thousands of, right? I mean, you know, every single thing is an obstacle. Every single thing takes twice as long and costs twice as much as you thought it was going to. And, you know, that's just the nature of building hardware, it's the nature of building, cutting edge technology. But I think some of the biggest obstacles have really come from the mindsets of the people that we've been talking to, right? So one of the things that we got a lot when we first started was, it's impossible, right? You cannot map every single plant in the field, right? It's impossible.
Yeah.
You know, there's all sorts of reasons why it's impossible. So, you know, why are you trying? You know, it's more important that you can say, well, here's a 10-meter area in the field, and if you could understand what's happening in that 10-meter area, you know, then you can do something with that. But we were looking at the field and going, you know, within that 10-meter area, you might have like a really thick patch of crop plants that are doing really well. You might have one little strip going down it where, when they've been drilling, there's been an overlap, so there's twice as many plants as there should be. You know, there's a patch where there's lots of stones. There's a patch where it's at the bottom of a hill, so it's like really wet and, you know, nothing can grow there. There's a bit when it's at the top of the hill when it's dry, you know, all within this 10-meter area, right? So there's such a huge amount of variation that taking a 10-meter area cannot work. You are always taking the average, you know, and that average is between very, very big differences of plus and minus. So when they said it was impossible, you know, we thought, well, I don't know if you're right, but we're gonna keep trying, right? We're gonna keep going. Then somebody said, well, why are you bothering? You know, what is the point of getting to that level of detail? What is the point of being that precise? Isn't that just overkill for wheat plants? You know, because who cares about wheat? Wheat is, you know, it's a throwaway crop, right? It is cheap. It is, you know, so many people produce it. You know, if you've got 10,000 hectares in a farm in Saskatchewan in Canada, you know, why do you care what each plant is doing? And you know, I think that sometimes we thought maybe they're right, but the reality is that, you know, each one of those plants in that field. So Saskatchewan is a really good example, because when you plant plants in Saskatchewan, you have an average yield of about, let's say, 2 tons per hectare. Yeah. The potential maximum for those crop plants is 20 tons per hectare. Yeah. If you're growing wheat in India or China, where, you know, because the farms maybe are smaller, or you don't necessarily have access to the technology, or maybe you're just given a whole heap of chemicals and saying, just use this, you know, there may be 1, 2, 3, 4 tons per hectare. You know, in all of those places, imagine if you know, across the 200 million hectares worth of farmland worldwide where you grow wheat, if the average wasn't, like global average wasn't 3 tons per hectare, but was 10 tons per hectare, yeah, you could produce twice the amount of wheat, yeah, and save like more than 50 million hectares worth of land, which you could use for forests or grassland, or, you know, just providing nice environments for people, or whatever it is. You know, you could use it for other things. And so for me, it always comes back to the fact that that attitude of, yeah, it's kind of good enough as it is, and maybe we can make incremental changes, but it's kind of good enough, misses the fact that we have to solve this huge problem. And you will only solve it with a 10x change in mentality. And you will only solve it if you try to radically reinvent the way things are working. So I think those are two, if you look at the biggest hurdles, I think it's been mindsets. And we still get them now, right? We still get like people talking to us all the time about, but farmers don't want it. And it's like, well, we've got 100,000 worth of farmers who are waiting for it now, right? Every farmer we talk to, where we can say we can do this, we can bring down costs here, we can increase costs, they might challenge how we do it, but they want it. And it just, it is massively frustrating that the attitude, not of farmers, but the people around farmers, is don't worry your head about it. It's a different industry. It's not something you have to worry about. It is just, it is something that's always worked like this and will continue to work like this. And you don't need to change anything, and you don't need to get involved. Is really sad, right?
Yes, very, 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 very sad. Wait, but let me ask. You have a co-founder. Now, I want to ask, what are some of the things you put into place to pick a co-founder? So we could learn from you. What should you look at for before you decide? Yes, your co-founders. What did you put into considerations to pick a co-founder who will work with you on this journey? Yeah.
So I guess the first question is who are you, right?
Okay.
So when Sam and I first started,
yes,
Sam recommended this thing called Colby A, which is a cognitive test, right? And the idea is you take this test to find out the things that you enjoy doing, and therefore, right? And it's not like, I enjoy doing coding, or I enjoy, fixing engines or something. It's like, what do I enjoy planning stuff? Do I enjoy coming up with ideas in the first place? Do I enjoy making sure that something is finished? There's that sort of thing, right? And I think that, to an ideal co-founder, what you want is somebody who is close to you, right? As in, something's completely different because you'll never get on with them and you won't agree, but is enough different that they bring something to the table that you don't. And when you're talking to somebody and they're putting ideas and you're going, I hadn't thought of that, that's something I hadn't thought of, and then you put ideas in front of them and they say, I hadn't thought of that as well. So it's that sort of understanding that there's somebody else is bringing something to the table. And then the other thing is, and I think it's really important, is if somebody can say to you, you're wrong. Yeah. You say something and they say, you're wrong. And this is why I think you're wrong. And you can listen to what they're saying and you're going, okay, I can see where you're coming from on that. That is the key. Those two things, a little bit of difference, and being able to accept criticism from somebody else and be able to take it on board and feel that you can do the same back. And I think the final thing is, if you always want to impress them, right? If you are always in a situation where you're trying to do something because you want to make sure your business partner thinks that's cool, I like that, or whatever, and so you're constantly pushing yourself because of them, then if you've got those things together, then you're making a team that is better than two people individually, and can achieve great things.
Great. But let me ask, if you were to start all over again, you've gathered some experience in this field you are currently. So if you were to start differently again, if you were to start all over again, sorry. So what would you do differently this time if you're starting all over again? What would you do differently?
So, it's difficult because I think a lot of the things, a lot of things we've gone through, they might not have delivered what we expected, but they've allowed us to learn and understand. I think one of the things I would, be really much more cautious about is keeping focus on where the money is going to come from first, and constantly trying to understand that, because I think that the big vision is fantastic, and I still really believe in our big vision and moving forwards, but to get to a point where you can follow that big vision, you need to have commercial proof points in place that you can deliver the basics first. And so, that's definitely a thing. Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the main thing. I think that, I don't know, in terms of, so an obvious thing to say is also maybe I wouldn't have done it in the UK.
So can you say that again?
Well,
Maybe
because
what?
I say that because
Yes.
the UK is it's a really great place to start a business.
Yes.
It's a difficult place to make a successful business. Yeah. And to get from the point of, look at this really cool proof point that I've, this prototype, this example of how it could work and how it can move forward, to right,
Yeah.
I'm making 10, 20, 50 million a year, revenue, and self-sustaining, and 200 people, and all that sort of stuff. That jump, is where it's the UK struggles. So, maybe 3 years ago, if we would have said, okay, let's all move to the US or Australia or Israel, or any of the places that are really good at, right? Because there are some places where they're really good at going, right, okay, this is a concept, now let's make it into a business. And yeah, but I think that it never have happened, right? I can't believe I'm too much of a fan of sailing in England and living stuff. I don't think it would ever happen. But I think if we'd have done that, life would have been much easier. That's for sure.
Great. I'm happy you shared that with us. I'm happy. So, but tell us, what's your big vision? So, what's your 5 years vision for small robotic company?
So I think small robot company is, at its heart, is a fundamental change to the way that farming works, right?
Completely. Yeah, I agree.
So what we've got at the moment is a solution, a profitable commercial solution that delivers the first part, which is the intelligence. And it delivers that intelligence that allows us through the Tom robot and Wilma to be able to map each plant, understand what type of plant it is, see how well it's doing and what needs to happen to it. So that gets us on farms, right? And because we then provide that information, which plugs into a spot sprayer that a farm already has, it is something that fits within the farmer's view. Yeah, because what we're doing is making their existing equipment more efficient, and we're doing it in a way which means that they don't have to do anything else. They don't have to buy a big piece of machinery. They don't have to change what they're doing. They don't have to. Over the next 5 years, what we want to do is to start introducing the other bits, introducing, precision spraying, because, in spot sprayers, even the best ones, the spray radius is like, you can't even see it, doesn't even fit in the screen. It's like 50 centimeters, right? It's really wide. And also it drifts because it's quite high off the ground. If you have something that's close to the ground, which can spray, maybe 15 centimeters, 20 centimeters, just one plant at a time, yeah, then you bring such a huge change to the way that the chemicals being used. Or you bring non-chemical weeding using electricity or lasers or concentrated light or whatever it is, so that you can get rid of the chemicals altogether, or you start plugging in the use of biologicals and this sort of stuff. That if you slowly start to introduce these capabilities by using robots onto the farm, and each time for a farmer, you can say, look, this is why you should do it. There's a business case for it, and there's an environmental case for it, and there's a societal, personal case for it. And each time you show that, and the farmer can go, I understand that, right? Let me show me working on a field. Okay, that's proved, right, roll it on my farm. So over the next sort of 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, what we want to do is to be on that journey with those farmers, to take those farmers with us, to be able to get to the point where they can see and understand and feel their farm at a per plant level. And they can know that on their farm, there is no waste. There is no excess chemicals being used. There is no excess energy being used, where everything is stripped back to just what is necessary to get the maximum crop, the maximum yield out of it. And for that to work, not just in Europe, not just in Canada and Australia, but because small robots, so that they can also work, in India, they can also work in sub-Saharan Africa, but they can also work in places where, they can be that leapfrog technology, like 4G is, right? As a connection technology, right? 4G removed the need for wires. So, people can get 4G, can basically get better connection speeds, better, connectivity than somebody who's got a wired internet connection. What we want to do is, for the people who don't have access to the tractors or the spot sprayers or the GM seed and all that sort of stuff, they can use a technology which is cheap and accessible and focused, and allows them to maximize what they're producing, minimize the amount of waste that they're producing out of it, that allows them to have a sustainable platform, a sustainable system to work within, and allow them to move, in some cases, from being subsistence to profit, all this sort of stuff. I think there's so much that can be done when you start breaking down the view of the world to an individual plant. So when you get down to that scale, then that allows you to expand out to the sort of 200, 400 million hectares worldwide that we could be working in.
That's great. Let me ask, have you been able to fund your company so far? What have you been able to do yet? Share with us.
So it's an interesting question at the moment, obviously. But so when we first started, we thought, we're going to get VC funding, and the VC is going to buy into it, and it's going to be there. We struggled with that, because I think, it started off, I think the vision was too big, and they got scared by that. They just got scared by the cost of being able to do it. And I think that, but the people who really bought into it were the farmers. The farmers have looked at what we're doing and said, we need this. And they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. In fact, so we started with a crowdfunding campaign. We work with a lot of farmers, a lot of, people who believe that we need to change what we're doing to make it environmentally sustainable. And we did that once. And for some reason, it really worked, and we're really happy with it. And we got a lot of people. We got about, I think it was nearly 1,500 people invested in this. That was incredible. The second time, we thought, maybe we won't do that. Maybe we'll go to investors. But then we had farmers come to us and saying, all you need is this number of farmers to give you as investment the same amount of money that they spend in diesel just on their harvest, and you'll get to the next round. And so we go, okay, we won't go to VCs then. We'll just go straight with the crowd again. And that's what we've done. So now 5 rounds of working with the crowd, working with farmers to get funding. We've now got 5,000 investors. I think it's like 5,006 or something. Varying levels. There's an awful lot who've invested like £10, but they've all invested, sort of via these, through Crowdcube, a lot of them, which has allowed us to keep our investment table quite clean. So it's just these sort of 5 groups and then some big investors. And that has, it's removed the people from the table who don't know what they're talking about. Because the vast majority of VCs, and I don't think that they will be angry with me for saying this, don't understand cereal farming. They don't understand the problems that farmers have. Whereas the people who we answer to are farmers. And trust me, we speak to them regularly, every few weeks. We have calls with them, and they don't hold back. If we're doing something they don't agree with, they bloody tell us, right? And we're happy for that, right? We're happy to be told off by them. We're happy for them to be disappointed in us, because that keeps us on the straight and narrow and stops us from going crazy off in different directions, right? So for me, it's hugely exciting and beneficial that crowd has supported us. Unfortunately, as the amount of money goes up, it becomes harder to do that through the crowd. And we've struggled with that, I think, recently. But the crowd is still there, and they're still keen, and they still want to support us, and they've been amazing, And I think that sorry.
No, I said great. That's great. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So so it's precisely that. I'll stop there. But
Have you raised any grant at all? Have you raised funds through grant at all?
Yes, sorry, yes. So we've
Okay.
raised, I think it's, so up until the ones we just won, I think it was 6 Innovate UK grants, so UK innovation
Um,
grants, but none of them have been for developing a robot. So, like, one of them was for developing the AI and the software system, the first
okay.
version of that, Wilma, which was really the money that got us off the ground in the first place, and we've got a lot to thank Innovate UK for that. We had money for developing different models for detecting slugs, for detecting disease, for detecting all this sort of stuff. We've had money for trialing and testing non-chemical weeding, particularly electric weeding, with a company called Rootwave, which has, proved that it worked. Right, it proved that it absolutely worked as a product, but the project wasn't long enough and didn't have enough money in it for us to then go, and now we need to apply it. So now we need to do another one to be able to get that working. But none of them have said, right, okay, we need to design this robot, we need to build this robot. None of them have supported that. We've put in a bid to develop a treatment robot, the Dick robot. I think it's 5 times in total. And each time our score goes up and up and up, but each time the pass score goes up and up and up as well, and we keep missing it. So, but the innovation grants have been brilliant. The challenge, though, when we're doing innovation grants is that, as a business, as a startup, you work in weeks and months, right? Whereas an innovation grant tends to work in years. So you have to be very careful with a project to make sure that, one, you're not trying to get something developed in 3 years that you actually need next month, and 2, that you work with your partners and you work with the Innovate UK team to say, we need to make sure that the goal of the project stays aligned with what you want to achieve out of it, because otherwise you get to the point where you're spending your own money and getting money from the government to develop something you don't need. And that's not so much a problem for us, but we know that quite a few companies that have been in a situation where they've been caught in this sort of catch-22 situation.
Great. Let me just being curious. I want to ask: have the UK government been very supportive to small robotic company, financially and otherwise? Have they been supportive to what you guys are doing in the country?
Have they been?
Yes.
So it's been a mixture, I think, and I think that it reflects the fact that governments change, right?
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes the UK government has been incredibly supportive.
Okay.
There was a period where we had the DEFRA is the British sort of Department of Farming and Rural Affairs, and there was a point when the head of innovation for DEFRA and the head of DEFRA and the head of farming, they stood on our stand when we were on in a sort of a fair that was being presented at Downing Street, so that when politicians from other departments came up to our stand to have a look at our robots, we had the ministers for farming talking to those people about what we were doing and how important it was. Right? That's hugely exciting. There's basically the government telling the government how important what we're doing is, right? But then, but then what happened is that 3 months later, all of those people who supported us resigned. They all left. And so, change of government, change of situation, and you find yourself in a situation going,
I see.
what do we do now? Right?
Okay. But generally, I want to also ask, what's your view about technologies and agri-tech space generally in the UK? Would you say it's so much massive? What's your general overview about the technologies in UK?
So it's nothing like as big as it should be.
Okay.
Because my partner Sam put this really well. It's like, in Britain, because of our climate, if you put something in the ground, it will grow, right? It's not, we don't have droughts, we don't have floods in the same way. We have pretty good weather, right? And we have good soils. So, it is a great place to start a business if you're an ag tech company, because, you can work with an environment where you can pretty much be sure that a crop will grow. So it's a great place to start. But then, we've put ourselves in a situation as a business, as a country, where we don't have the resources to deliver the food that we need with the people that in the country, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to go too political on this, but when you're in a situation where you cannot produce the food that you need because you won't allow the people into the country to help you do it, and you can't afford to pay your own people enough money to be able to do it, then you need technology, right? So the basic thing is, if you need that technology, you need to invest in that technology so that you can deliver those outcomes. And so, we are in such desperate need. And cereal farming is actually probably, is one crop. But, you look at fruit production, you look at salads, you look at vegetables, you look at potatoes, sugar beet, all the things that we produce in the UK. We could be producing more of it and better with less chemicals and less people, to allow us to fit with the fact that we don't have that many, we don't have the people to do it in this country. We've got a limited amount of land, and we need to be extremely careful about polluting the land, because we are quite compact in the UK. So I think that there is a huge potential to roll out, and there are some brilliant technologies like some examples off the top of my head: photonics for sensing, muddy boots for asparagus picking, Earth Rover for non-chemical weeding, Root Wave for non-chemical weeding. Brilliant companies that should be just universally used across the country, and they're not. And so we've got a long way to go before we get to taking full advantage of what we've got, I think.
Great. So what's your drive? What's your drive for life?
So I think the older I get, and I think we're having kids as well, I think I look around and realize how important, how fragile the world is we live in, right? We live in a world where, the equilibrium is very easily disturbed, and we need to stop disturbing it. We need to wake up to the fact that we can't keep doing the shit that we're doing and expect everything to be okay. And, it's very clear in the world that that is changing. Even in the UK, we haven't really had a standard year for weather, for example, for, sort of 5-10 years. Lots of places in the world are much worse than that, right? And so my drive is, I want to actively be part of something to make that better. And, if I wasn't doing this, I would be doing it in some other way. I'll be working for Boyan Slat doing ocean plastics. I would be looking at planting seagrasses. I would be looking at, I don't believe it's a problem that cannot be solved, but I believe that if it's going to be solved, you have to dedicate and focus yourself to doing it. And I think that technology is crucial, is vital, is core to making that happen. So, for me, as somebody who loves technology and who somebody feels very uncomfortable with the way the equilibrium is changing, is actually very exciting. And I'm doing robots for farming, but it could be something different. But ultimately, to do that, to look at my kids and know that I'm doing something to actively to try and make their life better, and to be able to, and the money doesn't really matter to me. It's good to have enough money to live and eat and afford to pay the roof over your head and stuff. But, it's much more around knowing that there is that purpose and dedication in place to be able to hold your head up high, right?
Great. That's great. So as we begin to plan to wrap up the show, I want to ask, what's your success tips for aspiring architect founders?
Find a farmer or
Mm-hmm.
find a group of farmers, right? Find a group of farmers who have the problem that you are trying to solve. Yeah. And don't get too excited about the technology to start with. Get really, really miserable and depressed about the problems that they have, and then get excited about coming up with solutions for those that will use technology, right? It will use AI, it will use blah, 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 whatever, but let's start with those farmers and keep them close. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you just start by talking to some farmers and then say, listen to farmers and going, right, farmers have said blah, and then you just go away and do this thing over here, and then you come back and go, ta-da! 9 times out of 10, the farmer will go, that's not what I meant. That's not what I want. It's not, it doesn't work. It's not, it's not right. You have to keep going back to them and working with them and showing them and getting them to try and get them excited about it to a certain extent. But then, making sure that you're not just reliant on the same group of farmers all the time, because they become, it's what they call confirmation bias. They're just locked into what you're doing and they believe in it. You have to keep expanding that group of farmers over time. But those people, they will be your customers. They will be the people who will pay money for what you're doing. And they will be the people who turn around to their friends or farmers that they know and say, have you seen this thing that Kenneth's doing over here? It's absolutely amazing. I'm using it and it's doing blah,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and farmers, the best way to market to farmers is by farmers, right?
Yeah.
If one farmer tells another farmer this thing works, the other farmer's going to go, oh. If somebody in a suit comes in from wherever and says, oh, buy my thing, they go, yeah, your car's too clean, your shoes are too shiny, I don't believe you. And so you need that to happen. So the customer, the farmer, is the most important thing. Stay close to them, listen to them, believe them, be humble about what they are saying, and answer their problems. If you answer their problems, you make a great product.
Great. That's really great, awesome. But let me ask, when you were starting, were you scared of failing at all? Was it a feeling of, or were you scared that I will fail on this venture?
Was I scared of failing?
Yes, were you scared of failing when you're starting?
I'm not. So I'm asking that because I think that when you start, you don't know how big the problems are you're trying to solve,
Mm.
right?
True? Yeah,
And
I agree.
a true entrepreneur, I would say, they start with less fear of failing on day one than they have on day 1,000, right? Because only by day 1,000 do they realize all the things that could go wrong that will stop them from failing. When they start, they don't know that's a problem. I would say that we've always believed it's got to happen, right? It's got to happen. And the closest we've come to failing, I think, has probably been in the last 2 months, where we had problems with an investment, and the sense that shit, this might not work, was so excruciatingly painful that it really hurt, right? And it really hurt me, it really hurt Sam, it really sort of knocked us down. But it knocked us down for about 3 days, and then we sort of came back and go, right, how do we solve this? How do we get back on our feet? How do we move forward? How do we progress it? So ultimately, I think you can't, you can be scared of failing, absolutely, but you've got to believe you can succeed.
I see. So we've come to the end of the show, but before we finally go, what's your last word? What's your last what will be your final? Okay, before you give your final word, before you give your final word, any life lessons you want to share? Yeah, any life lessons you've learned while you were building this, while you building small boutique company? Any life lessons you've learned that you want to share with us?
Life lessons sort of slightly outside of, and this is, obviously I've done a number of startups now.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky that my partner, my wife, not Sam, my business partner, my life partner, my wife Emma, we agreed a long time ago. We've been married for a long time, and we agreed a long time ago that there would be times in our lives when one of us would be trying something new, and the other one would be earning, right? And it means that we will probably never be rich, because, you know, if we're only relying on one wage at a time, then that's fine. But what it means is we have the support and the backing of the other person all the time. So, you know, now Emma is earning more money than I am, and, you know, and is supporting us as a family to be able to continue. There are times when that's been me, and I think that, you know, to have that sense of security within a relationship is the foundation for being able to go on and do stuff in business. If you're single and you can just crack on and do it, and you can risk everything, right? Because ultimately, you know, as a single person, you can live in a cardboard box and nobody cares but you. When you have a family, when you have kids, when you have all this sort of stuff, you have to make sure that there's a trust and understanding in place between you, that you are risking a lot, and you are putting yourself in a difficult situation to do that. And if that trust isn't there, if that belief isn't there between you and your partner, then it'll never work, because there will be resentment, there will be bitterness, there'll be disappointment, you know. And I think I'm sure that that's the reason why a lot of successful entrepreneurs are single, because, you know, they've burned all the bridges of trust with their partner while they're going through the process of being an entrepreneur. So when they get to the sort of the golden highlands on the other side, when they become a millionaire and they're super rich and everything's great, you know, actually what they've done is also burn out all the trust with their partner, and all the, you know, the joy with the partner. And therefore they're sitting there, you know, like Midas, right? You know, they're sitting there on a pile of gold, but they've got no love. And it's like, well, there's the fun in that, right? So if if, as I said, if you're single, if you're young, if you're doing this sort of stuff from the ground up, you can live in a cardboard box and still deliver your vision, and nobody cares but you. If you have a partner, if you have kids, if you have all the rest of it, you've got to make sure that thing is really tight and work, because if you get to the end of it and you lose them, trust me, you have lost the reason why you're doing it.
I completely agree with you, and I like the knowledge you shared on that area. But because you talked about marriage, I just want to ask: have you been able to what's like work-life balance for you? Like balance your business, your work, and family. Has it been? What are some of the things you do to be able to balance all these together? You know.
It's hard, right? It's hard, and I'm almost definitely put too much time into work, right? That's for sure. But again, if you have somebody who you trust, who can say, you need to close that laptop now, right? You are not contributing to the work, but you are taking away from the family. Yeah. And I think that, you know, you need to have that in place. You need to be able to show it might not be possible to spend as much time with your family and kids as you would do if you were working a 9-to-5 job, but you need to be able to show the same love and the same commitment, and make your children understand that you love them and you're doing it for them and you're not distant. And you need to understand for your partner that, you know, that it is impossible to do it without them, and you are doing it for them partially. So yeah, you have to be super careful. Now, again, I'm sorry, I keep referring to Sam, but, you know, there are so many life lessons I know from Sam. You know, he's much better at this than I am, right? You know, he is very clear about when his life is his life and when it's work life. Yeah, and he draws those lines really firmly, and that is really impressive. You know, and I look at him and I say, he's not detracting from what he's doing within the business by doing that, but he is better at keeping his family life. And I should learn from that. But I don't know, it's just something in my head that stops me from being as good at it as him. But yeah, I think you've got to be super careful, because it's not, I mean, there's obviously the risk of losing somebody. There's obviously the risk of, you know, your children growing up and not knowing who you are, but there's also the risk of you burning out, right? There's also the risk of you get to the point where you have nothing left to give. You have no more energy. no more emotion, or you start, sort of turning to other things like, using alcohol as a crutch, or, or exercise as a crutch. You can work on either end of the spectrum, right? And that is dangerous. It's dangerous to use as an individual, and what's going to happen to you. So you have to think about it, and you have to put some heart into it. But it is really hard. It's really hard to balance that out, right?
I see. Finally, we've come to the end of this show. But before you go, I want to give us what's your last word? Whatever you want to say, anything, your last word to us finally before you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that the people, your audience are actively interested in going down the same path, right? The same journey.
Yes. Yes.
But I would imagine that, I'm very lucky that I spent 25 years working in sort of cutting edge technology before coming into this. So, I could understand and see where their technology is working. Not everybody is lucky like that, right? No, they're either, they haven't had that experience, whatever. Innovation is not about technology, I think is the key, right? Innovation can come from the absolute smallest thing. It can come from something that's really apparently simple and dumb. I mean, not smart, not AI driven, just and that innovation, if it's done well and sort of fulfills a customer need, can have a radical change in the way the world works, and I think that if you are coming to this and thinking, well, I don't have a degree in, sort of computer science, or I don't have, a deep understanding of how AIs work, but I want to change the world in this way, there's 1,000 ways you can do it really simply, really cheaply, and really effectively. So, it's the imagination that's the important thing, not the technology.
Great. Thank you for your time so much. Thank you for coming on our show. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. We've learned so much. Personally, as a host, I've learned so much from your journey that you've shared with us this evening. Once again, on behalf of my audience, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for agreeing to do this with us this evening. We are grateful. Myself, my team members, my audience, we are all grateful, and we're excited to hear your journey. So much to learn from your entire experience. So much to learn from it. So much worth of knowledge to gain from the entire experience you've had. Thank you very much for joining. So, guys, once again, if you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, do it to subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can do more things. We can get to do bigger things, And don't forget to hit the notification buttons to get notified whenever we go live or we drop any new videos. And don't also forget to like the video, drop your comments, engage with us on the comment sections. So let's do things together. All right, guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you.
I just want to say, Kenneth, I'm just going to cut in there, and I'm going to speak to your audience for exactly the same reason. What Kenneth is doing here is so important, right? What Kenneth is trying to do here is so important. This industry, this sort of ag tech industry, is what will allow us to change the world, right?
True.
And Kenneth is bringing this understanding of how to make that work to as wide as possible audience, and is reaching out and putting dedication and desire and hope into making this happen. So it's extremely important that you follow him. It's extremely important that you give him all the sense of your engagement and your enthusiasm about what he's trying to do. So please.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully we're going to bring again so many questions, but I got to let it go this evening. We are really excited to have you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So it's on this note to bring the show to an end. So guys, thank you all for joining. I'm really, really grateful, guys.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Bye-bye.
Bye.